You have your books? And then when you sit after somebody tall sits in front of me, I'm tall, I still can't see stuff.
I go back to nails. I love Neil. Neil's like my mentor.
I thought maybe you were done.
Alright.
So should we email the list as suggested? Last big changes to our leadership team.
Oh, yeah.
It's just sort of makes sense.
She's not, yeah, TD's the best.
Okay.
Hello. Thank you. And that's the thing, I then I'm sorry, you don't like how now, it's good, actually. It's really comfortable. Yeah, it's really, yeah, I know, I did, she was within like a mile run of Washington, like Washington, yeah. It was great, it was a great organization, yeah.
It's like that.
Absolutely. We can just.
Right, within, and Denver. You know, in Denver, this fast. Financial crisis, so I don't really. So I complete collapse, oil market, and like everything changed with dying. It's got that one thing too.
Yeah, I want to start it. I watched the hockey part of the time.
Yeah.
People could be else. I try to stay out of it. I enjoy it. Yeah, I was good. I did everything.
So that, potatoes in college, potatoes in Chicago, freezing to death right now. Because they played across outside unless it's -10, and it's only like 2, so.
So I just wanted to chat.
Yeah, and I said, what about the wind chill? And he was like, the coach doesn't back the wind chill, but it's the air temperature is the only.
I understand. There's something worse.
I meant, yeah, no, I understand, it's not good, like, yeah, all the.
Where
He's in Norwich, New Jersey, he was a public school teacher and it was sports and he's. So.
Cool.
So.
Appreciate it.
Sorry, I need to update something very quickly.
I know, I haven't looked.
Before I do something.
When he did.
Last night, and then like, and doing something. Sure. You guys, essentially.
Yeah, the. I think it's hard, we do a lot, and, finding. So it's to figure out.
So I'm gonna take about 2 minutes here, I gotta update something quickly and then.
Practical.
Yes.
School system, so. What doesn't.
Just need to look at something to make sure I'm in the first match. Yeah.
Like this. It's. There's a team.
So I want to avoid really parents. The feedback.
But mine's out.
No.
That's the other thing in RMS. All sports, but the same attention. Yeah. Allows.
Just change it.
Because. No, that's the sure precedent.
Okay. I'm sorry, I need to update some stuff around just because otherwise we can't present, so. So what's going on here?
Do you need help from our technical support person?
Neil, are you looking at these things too?
I was looking at something.
On this one here, is this Marion Cross? 8064, like that's not what last year's budget was. That means all last year's stuff's not correct. Maybe I don't have the right thing.
3A.
We looked at our. Yeah, nice, yeah.
I was asking this.
Yes. Yeah,
Just like. So they just like. You're making me want to like run through this serious. I think you're. That's not about certain class.
That's like minus, plus the 300 minus this.
Yeah.
That's just. I just. They were saying. That's it. So anyway. Right, we have to have for the get on this thing. And then she told me, yes. Yeah. But I think there's confusion kind of. Because we all just, like I put this morning and there was nothing there. So, yeah, we just got it now, so. Yeah.
Where is it? 1.5.
Budget, all that's a little person.
What is your, before you adjust it?
I love, that's why I just, well, like she's not like the other.
Oh, not just asking.
But we want to zero, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we decided not.
1942 divided by 884.
That was not in your. No, she says her coach, the class.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what.
Four is minus 16 cents.
The plus divided by.
Yes, remember was that?
Doesn't show.
Yeah. Right, because I found. Yeah. And I know you're right. It was a little bit like, yeah. And I didn't have those minutes yet. Yeah. I will put it something.
29, 31, 79, that was a great long day.
Oh,
He has the.
okay, because I, there's somebody crash, and then there's. What I mean, yeah, like. I wonder, if there might, there's another, like, what's the, that's, like, I used to, yeah. Still have to go. Yeah. Like, what?
No.
I can't recall, like, you guys that little room. It's just been. It's something that you're in there, right? So they're trying to figure out. Oh, wait, so we just have, so we have a better, Garrett did, yeah, so that we have a better conversation. Okay. So that's the, okay, thank you. Well,
I don't know, where do you go?
I think we can do 2 times as
Where is it? Wait,
I don't know where it is. It's so hard to tell which one it is.
today it was this.
They're about
Oh,
freaking
there's-
out. So anyway, it might be worth looking at them because there was, like, the budget doesn't reflect what I remember Wednesday. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
How's the hospital, Michael?
Good.
Yeah? Sure.
Sorry, 6:50. Anything for agenda review? Not heard. Do we have any public comment? How it may address the board?
This is a great public comment. Dr. Arnold, or Frederick Orange, according to your. So I understand that the 26-27 budget you're voting on tonight includes the funding of 2 classrooms of 3 to 5-year-old preschoolers, which is of course good news to me. So I previously commented, publicly funded pre-K has provided numerous academic benefits to my child who will be entering kindergarten next year. Undoubtedly, there's research that argues that because achievement gaps start before formal schooling begins, pre-K programs may be a tool to address academic inequality before formal K-12 schooling. But my gratitude for the publicly financed pre-K program at MCS is that it expands the degree to which the Norwich community takes responsibility for each of its members. It deepens our collective commitment to ensuring the well-being of everyone who lives here. A publicly financed pre-K program overseen by qualified and unionized educators and integrated with the offering of a public school is a social and political decision we should be most proud of in Norwich. Like universal K-12 education, every pre-K age child should have a safe, warm, and nurturing place to go during conventional working hours, regardless of who is raising them and whether their guardian or guardians work or not. These programs should not be means tested in any way. Every child should have the ability to attend the publicly financed pre-K program, regardless of their socioeconomic background. Indeed, Act 76, passed in 2023, stated that full-time pre-K would be available to all 4-year-olds in Vermont by 2026. Though like so many of Vermont's progressive policies, including universal healthcare, it lacks a financing plan for it to be realized. At the June 7th meeting, it was clarified that the MCS program is not truly universal and accessible because a sizable waitlist exists. In the coming months, I implore each of you to serve advocates for universal and accessible pre-K in Norwich. I do not believe a universal and accessible program comes in the form of means tested tuition charging. I also believe that though provocative, pre-K should not be seen as revenue opportunities for other educational obligations or programming, or to free up a system. A possible compromise may be that all 2nd-year children, those who are poor, attend a universal, accessibly, publicly financed program, but 1st-year students are subject to a tuitioning program. Many parents face impossible choices to give up their career in order to raise young children and lose that source of income and potentially self-actualization, depending on what your job is, or spend potentially huge amounts of money on childcare in order to work a job that may or may not make financial sense given the cost of care. Incomes of all levels are strapped. The tuition charge of $6,000 is 83% of my grocery bill for the year. Norwich must lead and fund pre-K in ways that are universal, accessible, and affordable to the extent possible to collectivize the incredible workload and cost of raising a child. That's that.
Any other public comments? Yes.
Can I ask a question before I? If it's something is later on in the budget hearing adoption, is it appropriate to speak then, or?
I would say that this question, addressed to me, I think either or. The agenda item is gonna be either the ELA or the budget hearing, so
So we can comment, we can give a public input now,
sure,
please.
yes.
Okay, Matt Buck, 64 Carpenter Street, and I shared this with board members earlier, but I also just want general public to also hear. I'm here to speak on behalf at the last meeting I was there, and I just didn't get a chance to speak, but it's about the reduction of the point for tech integration. And so I just want to share for that point for tech integration reduction from a safety standpoint, that the elimination of this rule really just does not make sense to me. Schools need this position with a professionally trained and certified person to integrate tech with teachers and students. That hardware, web-based subscriptions, all while ensuring that student safety and security is ensured. We're not eliminating a certified teaching position that is dedicated to engaging with students, teachers, and understanding the privacy agreements, DPAs, COPA standards, ISTE. It seems more than necessary in this day and age in education. Just what our district comes under attack on a regular basis. I think somebody needs to be here for that. So that's my concern, especially because these are tech and the accounts anywhere from 4-year-olds to 12-year-olds. There's a different level of necessity with them. And I just think it's so important. And I'm speaking without her knowing on behalf of my daughter that I have really serious concerns for if she's signing up on typing something, or if that company is not vetted, are they selling her information with her first and last name and whatever it might be, like, those are really serious things for her personal safety in our family, so. I just see it appropriate that this position should not leave. I don't want it to jeopardize the safety of an entire community of children and teachers, you know, for that. So I didn't get to say it last time, but that's what I would share. Thanks.
Good, thank you. All right, any other comments? Is anyone online? Sorry, I'm not online.
Hello, Jen, do you see anybody online and,
Not with their hands up.
okay,
Okay, great. Okay, with that, we'll move on to our public hearing. I'm sorry, was there anything I had to do as far as opening or closing this meeting differently than a regular meeting based on what I saw?
no, we're just gonna open the public hearing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so the two items, well, the three items are, the first one is the ELA programs. You may recall last week, we opted to defer that to tonight. I don't think there's anything really much to discuss. We've discussed it obviously a few meetings ago, went into a lot of detail, thanks to all Lauren's help and preparation. We talked about the budget, what's in the budget, and we've all agreed that what's the line item in the budget is how we're gonna deliver this program. And then last week, last Wednesday, Lauren had that great Q&A all prepped too. So do we have any other comments, questions on that? And we moved it to tonight just because it's obviously a line item in the budget, and I think we all agreed that it was. We moved us all to approve that along with the, not in advance of the budget, but along with the budget. Okay. Nothing else on that. We'll move on to our next one, which is the 2026-2027 budget hearing and adoption. Teresa, do you want to go as far as files go? So I've actually, what I was thinking about, so the way we structured this meeting is we've taken a lot of time over the past.
Garrett, I think probably what we wanna do is, take a vote on that ELA program now. Because it's a curricular change, right?
Oh, okay.
And so if we take a vote on it now, approve it, then we know that we're going into the budget discussion, that it is going to be included in the budget.
Got it. Okay, I'm sorry, because it's a slightly different meeting. I thought we were doing the voting below now. Okay. All right, so do I have a motion to approve the ELA program as presented? Gina,
I move to approve the ELA program as presented.
I have a second from Lisa. All those in favor?
I,
All right, that is unanimous. Okay, so the ELA program has been officially approved. All right, thank you for that, Neil. We will now move on to the budget adoption hearing. The way we work, we're gonna run this obviously, so Teresa, I don't know if you want to just go through, maybe just make sure everyone here and in the audience understands what all these files are. We don't need to go through them one on one, but maybe we just zip through all of them and you can just say, you know, 6 is this, 5.1 is this, 4.1 is this. What we have prepared is we have prepared then a couple slides, which I'll bring up that hopefully will drive this discussion and enable the board to zero in. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be starting with the budget as presented. And then there are 4 or 5 items, which we've been discussing at the last meeting and this meeting and our budget meeting. Really they would be add backs. And we'll go through that in a few different slides. So Teresa, maybe you do want to start and just.
Yeah, just, 1 and 2 are just.
I can bring some stuff up to you on the screen, just let me know, but if there's
Sure.
anything.
Yeah, just mentioning just, 1 and 2 are basically just, again, the same things going back to enrollment and then staffing. 3A is listing the proposed budget where you're gonna see the appropriations and the revenues. Three B then takes it, breaks it down with the articles, and at the bottom section is a tax rate and calculation. Four is again, we've been looking at where it's, the proposed appropriations report in a little more detail, broken down more by functions. And then,
I'm sorry, so this one here. What's the difference, this is where, this three B and this three B,
I don't know why there's two, three Bs.
cause
It
this one
does say-
here actually looks,
Yeah, the three. Sorry, I don't know why it still says two, three Bs, but at
I'm
the top,
taking the depths of my spreadsheets here, well, once.
One 3B.
On the tab, it said three,
Yeah.
on the document itself, it said.
Yeah.
three.
yeah, it said 383 B on the document, so. Not even typo on my. Label.
These are, it's still,
Yeah, just. We got a 3A, 3B.
sorry, what's this in three B and three A then?
The 3A is actually the, listing out the appropriations and the revenues. To the net assessment at the bottom of the page. And then 3B again takes, with your warrant articles and everything else in there. And then, on the bottom section is your tax. Calculation with the CLA and all that. The difference there, it's
Sorry,
like a
so-
part two.
It's the, for some reason, the PDF name is called three B, which is on the tab.
Yeah.
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 And then why is the Marion Cross School is 8274 for last year, here it's 8064.
Yeah, I'm just, look, I'm not sure why, because I didn't change those numbers.
And both those are slightly different, because it should be 7946 from last year.
Yeah, and I didn't. I'll look at that real quick because,
I'm sorry, 8274, okay, so this one's right, 8274, and this one, okay, so 3A, sorry. I was looking a year prior, 3A, this is good, okay.
yeah, the number,
3B, these things seem to be, something's a little wonky here.
maybe it didn't carry the formula, like it should have just carried down forward. I can update that.
So 200.
Okay, and then the net assessment. Revenues are 9. Anyways, because 3A unfortunately doesn't go down to the tax rate like this one does. Right,
Yeah,
3A just goes to net assessment, 3B. Goes to the tax rate,
Yes.
so we don't have the actual revenues, because obviously you have that little add back for. These revenues are correct, the 1943.
Yeah. Yeah.
So these numbers here just need to be changed. You maybe want to just work on that, Teresa,
Yeah.
and then we can reload it. And then it should match what we're gonna show in a second here. Okay. Okay, so why don't, with that being said. So what we're, and maybe I'll take my slides in a little bit of reverse order here, unfortunately, it's a yeah, so it's gonna be harder to you know what, I'll bring up on this and then go like that.
So these aren't on the agenda, right?
So these are now filed into
Oh,
it.
you did, yeah, if you refresh, they'll maybe appear. For those people participating at home. Yes.
Yeah, so they can pull up this, so this is the PDF that's in there, so what we're starting with, and actually, sorry, let me just. Sorry, I'm thinking through this real time here about how to. So what we're working with here is the top line for the Marion Cross budget, so we went through the Dresden budget last night, so this is their Dresden assessment, so this has been fixed and it's obviously decided by the Dresden folks. for the Dresden board. The Norwich budget here is what we're deciding on tonight, so it's this number here. This is not, actually, let's just go back here.
There's a difference between, there.
Oops. Why is that working? Sorry, let me just get rid of this thing. There's that. There we go. So these are the numbers I'm gonna go flip back and forth, because obviously this is not the, what we're doing here, so this number here is what we're talking about. So let's call this the 6.15% budget. So this is the budget that we're working with. This, as we discussed at our last meeting, it includes pre-K, it includes the art teacher, but it doesn't include the 4 or 5 items that we've been talking about, which is the 0.4 tech integrationist, the 0.4 math person, and a few other things. We'll go through those in detail on my next slide here. So what we're gonna go, what I prepared is basically something that shows the changes that we can look at tonight if we want to change this number and increase it from the 6.15%, and we can do the calculations live. If we want to add any items back that have been taken out. Now, just to replay the tape, we have spent a lot of time over in the Dresden budget meeting earlier this week. If people remember, both the middle school and the high school, we spent quite a bit of time in that meeting making some fairly difficult decisions as far as trying to really keep that budget in that kind of 6% increase. There are some cuts to both the RMS as well as the high school that were done. Julie Levinson actually very kindly had taken a few more cuts at the high school to try to save a couple things at RMS that were even more important to keep the entire Dresden budget at basically between 6 and 7% increases. Otherwise, it was going to go higher than that. We can do the same tonight. I think what we should all keep in mind is even though the tax rate implication is going to be fairly nominal, and the idea might be to let's just pile on as much as we can in this budget because it's not going to have a big tax rate implication. I think we need to remember that the Norwich residents have had fairly large tax rate increases, 17% a couple of years ago, not so much last year. But what we approve in this budget is going to carry forward into the future budgets as well. And that was really one of the big discussions on the other side of the river, that we were trying to make sure that, you know, we weren't setting ourselves up for failure next year, because as people probably know, that tax rate discount, which we can get into in a second, or calculation, will be going away. It'll be getting even lower next year. For example, if you were to remove the tax rate discount this year, instead of having a flat tax rate, we'd have about a 5 or 6% increase on that. So it's going to be that would be going away completely, being reduced further next year and then going away the following year. So I think we just have to be cognizant that we're not just approving, you know, a large increase to this budget for future years. Does anyone have any comments or thoughts on that? Michael?
In looking at slide 3 in your presentation, many of these items were discussed at length in the previous meeting.
Correct.
I hear you about trying to balance the needs of the school with the concerns of the taxpayers, and the fact that the tax rate is artificially low right now, and none of us has great insight into what's going to happen in Montpelier this year or in future years. Just to sort of get to the point, when I take a look at these and think about what could or should be added back in, I think people have been very persuasive about the need for more technical support in the tech integration specialist. If we were going to make an investment, I would say that should be at the 0.8 FTE level. And that's not, I'm not commenting on the individual who presently has the job. I just mean from a dedication of resources, that it would make sense to me to invest more in that. The rest of the things, I felt like Sean conveyed to us that, hey, we've thought about this, we can live with this, we've figured out how to array our budget. And so I would not be open to any other change. With the exception of, I just had one quick question about site improvements. I think if you have a tax relief mechanism that sunsets over time, that does provide an incentive to make one-time investments, right, that aren't going to repeat in the future. So I know that our facility staff deem that $18,000 not critical, but it would seem to me to make sense to make that one-time investment now while you have the cover of the tax rate. And then you won't have to do it in a future year where we might be in a less favorable tax environment. And so I want to learn more before making some sort of motion to add back in that $18,000. So I'm not 100% certain the view of the administration on those funds.
Great, so Michael took us right into where we're going tonight, which is a item by item discussion of each one of these items, so let's just go right to the deck that we have prepared. Again, so these are basically where we're starting today, we'll call it the 6% budget, okay? These are the items that have been removed to get to that 6% budget. And these are the items tonight, as Michael just pointed out, that we are discussing whether we want any or all of them to be added back in. These two slides, we can talk about what they actually are now, and then we can get into an actual dollar amount and tax rate and budget implication and tax rate implication number on the next slide, which is where all the calculations are done. All comparing to the 6% budget. I'll go through these first, Sean, and then maybe the next part is that survey and kind of talking about the items. So again, the first item is the FTE kindergarten teacher. That teacher has been eliminated next year due to a smaller class size. That teacher has, and again, what we have decided, the option that we could do is we were evaluating originally when the budget went up to 9% of whether we wanted to retain that position and make it a second building sub to alleviate some of the substitute teaching needs. We have, at this point, decided to keep it out, but as a way to eliminate one FTE without reducing the class, without having impact on classes. Don't have any questions on that one? What I'll do after is I'll go over to Sean too and get his thoughts, but that's that one here. The 0.6 FTE is a special ed. Again, that was basically eliminated because the special ed resource is no longer needed at MCS. And I've got some notes over here because there's a little bit of complexity in what happens to these FTEs. So this 0.6 has been combined with a 0.4. If we decide to eliminate that, to maintain a 1.0 equivalent position for the school. Okay, so it's, and keep me honest here, Sean, if that's what we've done. Okay, so when you're looking at the FTE sheet and you're like, well, we're only reducing by, it looks like we're reducing a lot more than we are, that's what's happening to these positions. Here's the 0.4 FTE tech integration specialist. Again, we're gonna go through and ask on each one of these. Tonight, we're gonna evaluate whether we want to add, keep the 0.4, so basically add it back in to retain the current position. There's also been discussions to add, increase it to a 0.8 FTE.
I'm sorry, I have a question on that. I don't need an answer now, but I don't want to lose it. I'm a little confused because on exhibit 5.2, there's a technology integrator, which is this position, but then there's a technology assistant, which was not filled this year, but is budgeted to be filled next year. And I don't know what the difference between those two positions is and whether that would address some of the concerns that we keep hearing from parents and the public about the safety of the technology here in the building. So it's confusing to me that there seem to be two positions and one of them wasn't filled this year and one of them was filled this year, and then next year we're saying one of them won't be filled and the other one will be filled. And so yeah, thank you. Again, I don't know if I don't know how Garrett wants to handle it, but I just
Do it now.
Okay.
That's confusing. And
Thank
that's
you.
my vote. You didn't ask me, but.
So that position is, so both positions are filled. One,
Why is it a zero
that's a
budget?
Teresa question, but I can tell you, people in the building, both of them are filled. One is the person who fixes our machines, takes care of our network. The other is the person who works with teachers, works with
Okay.
vetting software, and works with kids.
So the technology assistant, which is staying, is the one that takes care of the machines and the other one, okay, thank you. I was confused because it was zero and I just, yeah,
I think the other one's labeled as the technician,
Yeah, computer technician.
yeah.
It's basically the difference between IT and like someone who does tech versus.
so I understand the difference between that, but I'm confused about the money. And how it shows up this year, last year, et cetera, so.
Michael?
Just, I know there are some people trying to follow along. Lisa, I just want to make sure that understanding the exhibit that you're looking at 5.2. When I look at page 4, you see near the top technology integrator,
Right,
and then underneath it, technology assistant.
right,
And you see the 0 and the 24-25 actual
Right.
expenditures.
correct.
But then there's a positive number in the 25-26 approved budget.
Right, and then there's the support specialist below that as well. So
Yeah,
is that
that's-
not,
Yeah.
is that, so there's not 3 people in the bill, I guess that's what I'm confused by.
I'm suspecting just from looking at this, and I think Teresa would have a better answer, is that the position that's in is 53,110 under technology support specialist. Is the position that we have this year filled, and then maybe it got a title changed for next year to technology assistant.
Is that what it is? Okay, it
That's-
just, yeah, it appears that there's 3 people that could be in the building and could not be in the building, depending on how you look at the chart.
Actually, there are 2 people.
Okay, thank you, yeah, I appreciate that, thank you very much.
Okay, and we'll hit each one of these in a minute. So the point for FT math coach. Again, at this point, this is being combined with the 0.6 to maintain the 1.0. Again, the decision tonight is we're gonna call option 4, which is whether to add that back and retain it. And again, I put that note there that reinstating this means that we're probably adding another 0.4 FTE to help Sean maintain it's the math gets a little funky when you start doing the FTEs, but we can discuss that. And then we've got the 4 dollar amount items. Again, I put these all in your option 5, if Michael already, made a case for one of them, if we want to take all of them, and we'll have Sean go through each one of these as well. So why don't we, so really the next slide, which we don't have to go to yet, is really evaluating option 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5, and we look at the tax rate implications for each one of these. But I think before we do this, it might be good to have Sean just go through for 2 things. Sean went through and spent some time and actually asked the staff for opinions as well, and how this was gonna be perceived. Each one, and then maybe Sean, if you wanna go through at least. Yeah, I don't think we have to talk too much about, again. Yeah, why don't you go through them and kind of, well, we can talk about them individually.
All right, so I'll just go in order of this list. So I did ask the staff if they would just do a quick survey for each of these items to say whether the item was essential for our program. Great to have, but not essential, and we will be okay without this position, just to get a feel, because not everyone comes to meetings and not everyone is voicing out loud, but the survey seems like a safe way. So I did that. The kindergarten teacher position had 14% of staff that said it was essential to our program, which makes sense because right now it's not. We don't have the numbers to justify it. So to me, that's pretty easy. We probably would have done that whether we had budget issues or not. Second item, the special education position. As a staff, that was essential. 32% of our staff said that was an essential position. Something for you to know about that is the person that does that work is not leaving, is getting repositioned. So if we were to have an influx of students who had special education needs, it would be pretty easy to shift around a little bit. So reducing that for next year's budget still allows us to have the expertise of the person in the building. So if we needed it, we would have less intervention services and more special ed services if that came about. The tech integration specialist, I asked in 2 ways. I asked first just to keep it the way it is at 0.4, and 27% of our staff said it was essential to keep at the 0.4. And then I asked if we were to increase it to 0.8, 19% of the staff said it was essential to our program at the 0.8 FTE. I think I talked at the budget committee meeting that I think this is a good test of our federation model at SAU 70, because we could access resources from across the SAU.
John, on that point, maybe, again, I want to take you off your, track here on the survey results, but since we're on the tech integrationist, can you maybe just make sure that all of us as board members understand what are the tech resources in the building? And then to Matt's concern, which I think is frankly all the board's concern, a little bit about, are we really risking child safety? Who's gonna like take over that role? Are we really leaving people to the wolves as far as the internet goes and lack of education?
Yeah, so we, in our building right now, we have one person who is designated to fix computers, who can do work on our network, who can fix any of our devices, that sort of work.
And that's that's a full-time
Full-time
in the building.
in the building. We also have one person who is here on Mondays and Fridays, it represents this position, the tech integration at 0.4. And that person's role is to help staff, so if they need help with using their devices, she assists with that. Also to help with all the vetting, so any apps that we have, she goes through with the Federation Council of Other Integrations and looks at those apps and make sure that they're safe. There's also a several step process that they have to go through. She used to, before this year, work with kids. An increase from our technology department with safety this year. So she has dedicated most all of her time to that app vetting piece this year, worked with staff some. So if we were to move this position to 0.8, we would be adding back in the component which is having this person work with kids. So then the person who thinks working with teachers would work with the vetting piece and would have time to work with kids around internet safety and digital citizenship. It is a little bit of a risk to do away with the position. It's a test, like I said, of our bigger model. It could be that we try this model and we say, wow, this is something that just doesn't work. And next year we add this position back in. That's about all I can say about it. I don't know if as our new tech director, you have any more to say, but.
So the app, just to be clear, I think the apps, as I recall, are actually all vetted by the SAU technology. I remember, sorry.
Lauren's saying, yeah.
Lauren's here now.
Apps are vetted by,
Alright.
there's a committee
Yeah.
of tech integrationists, one from each of the schools, they come together. So the in-house person does a little work on the flow chart to vet an app, and then they bring it to this larger committee. They do more work to make sure that it fits all of the categories, and then they bring it back to us.
But you can't use an app that hasn't been vetted by this committee, right? Or can you?
That's what we.
Yes.
To, we're moving to not being. Before it was just basically people got apps and it wasn't really a vetting process, so now we put a vetting process into place.
I know that was a big focus of the tech team over the past year or two is basically saying like, we gotta stop this. This is like not good practice. Yes, Lauren?
I would say a concern that I would have about not having somebody in each of the buildings is situated in that, is that in each of the buildings, a staff member can go to the integrationist in the building and say, can I use this app? Is it on the list? I'm thinking about using this app, and like in real time, the person can say, yes, it's allowable, or no, it's not allowable, or wait, you're using it anyway? Now I'm gonna block it, right? Or I'm gonna bring this to the Federation Council to consult, and then bring that back. So it does feel like a liaison to position, between what's happening at the SAU and what's happening in each of the schools.
So right now, the kids, as far as the education, like internet safety person, that doesn't, no one's doing that right now because the 0.4 is really doing the app vetting and the helping with teachers on the Monday, Friday. There is no time for kids to give them internet safety. Is that correct?
Right, and my recommendation of this is if we're going to keep the position, then I would move it to the 0.8 because if you're gonna have it, it might as well be useful. And it's more useful to have someone who works with kids and works with teachers that does the whole package. I think one of the hard parts now is when you have somebody who's here just 2 days a week and half of one of those days is spent at the SAU in the tech meeting. It's hard to accomplish a whole lot. So I think if the board wanted to consider this position, I would go against what the staff said and say that, if it's gonna be useful, a 0.8 is what it should be. That would be my recommendation.
I do wonder too, if staff may not know the potential of the position because they just haven't experienced that part of it. Yeah, so it would be a little less easy to envision and prioritize adding that back in when you look at these other things that we currently have in the school and we know what that's about and we know the value that it adds.
Okay,
All right, let's keep going down. So the math coach position, I talked about that before. But again, I'll say that was a position that was grant funded. It has been a great position. The person in it has done some amazing things. It's been super helpful. Started our math night that's been popular with everyone. It was on the list because of two things. One, we didn't intend for it when we put this position in to be a lifelong position. It was meant to come in, help with the math program, get people up and going, and give that support. Two, with our new literacy program, we are going to be grant funding a person who will be a literacy coach to come in and help with that part. So I think we also have to look at capacity with staff. It's a position that if you put it back in, you would be working with 35% of the staff that said it was essential to have. And I think it's a great position. It's just one that if we're going to be looking at reductions, this is one that could sunset because the intent was for it to do that. Sure.
and again, that individual is being combined with another, with the special ed as far as in our math of FTEs, correct? So that individual is one FTE now in a classroom position.
Right, so the individual in the position would be moved to a classroom position.
That's right. Yep.
So the other ones are, technology equipment is something that I would suggest we keep on our list to eliminate, just because we have some grant funding that's gonna pay for a bunch of that this year.
Okay.
And that seems to be okay. Field trips, I think that our PTO would help us with that piece. I think that's an okay thing if we're looking for places to reduce. Assemblies. The same, I think we could look for outside resources to fund that. Site improvements was, interestingly, the staff had 60% who said that was essential to our program to take care of our building and maintain that. So I agree with Michael that if that's something that's not going to continue year to year, it might be something to slide in this year, take advantage of that and get a few things done. Just to give you the percentages on the technology equipment, 19% of people said it was essential. Assemblies, 24%, and field trips, 19%.
All right. So I think again, when we asked Sean to look at the budget and how to tighten it up, I think we can tell he's got a pretty good bead, at least from my perspective, on the staff and their feelings as well. I'd be more shocked if we end up with a bunch of people saying these are critical and having to eliminate that. Okay. As far as the site improvements, one thing, Teresa, so I'm a little bit, as far as what those are, I thought originally that our facilities director had determined that we could still use the money then for this year.
Yes,
Like it would definitely be missed. It would just be like if we had to tighten things up,
Right.
these are things that we don't need to necessarily do, but it would probably mean that we need to do them next year.
yeah, and originally, we didn't decrease the budget, like that 18,000, pulling that out didn't decrease the budget. Basically put us back at status. We had actually added some in with the hopes of doing a couple more projects or something, but if it didn't happen and we had to cut the budgets, then, you know, it was one of those things.
Okay, Michael?
I guess my question to Teresa is, what would we be buying with that $18,000? To the extent the tax environment might be somewhat more favorable this year than in future years.
Right, and I can tell you, I can get the facilities document that we have and then, and tell you how we had added that.
So Teresa's looking that up, I
And I
think,
did upload, sorry, I
okay,
did upload a revised for those two numbers. And I just labeled it 3A and 3B, so it's one continuous document.
okay. Insert that, put it now matching. Yeah, I can print it out.
I think, check, I was running some other scenarios, so I got back.
Okay, so what we've done here is moving from that slide to this slide, and what Sean's saying is we put this up here so everyone can pretty much very quickly assess what the expenditure implications are, and then all the way down to the tax rate. So again, just so everyone understands, Marion Cross, this is our budget, so this is what we're talking about. This is what it was last year, this is what it was this year, again, this is our baseline. What we've been calling a 6% budget, so it's got an increase of 6.15. The Dresden assessment we just updated, this is what was approved on Tuesday night over in Dresden. So again, this was after some cuts that was made to keep that, and again, that's. The overall budget's actually pretty much in line there, what's it up now, but what's the whole Dresden budget up?
It would have been just over 6%.
Just over 6%, and obviously, the assessment is our piece of it, because we base it on how many kids we have going over the river, so it changes a little bit here, but this is based on our percentage of students that are over there. So again, that's our total education or, you know, expenditures on the two schools or on the three schools. Then we've got our revenues, including our prior year fund balance, is this number here. Again, that went up quite a bit because we had an increase in a block grant. Then that number, so the 1795 minus your revenues is what we call our education spending. Then we've got the long-term ADM number. Again, this jumped quite a bit this year. Because we believe either we don't want to get into too much, but this is really helping us this year. It's unclear if this is gonna stay like this. This number could go back down again next year, so that's another thing that I think is weighing on all of us in the back of our heads, that's heavily geared towards. Again, we don't have 800 kids in the system, it's based on the weightings, based on poverty, English language learners, and our rural nature of our town, which is very rural compared to the rest of Vermont. That divide education spending by the ADM, that's your per pupil spending, so it's not 4%. Then we've got the equalized homestead tax rate, so again, divide that number by your yield, that gives you your tax rate. So the yield comes from the Department of Education, that's in the letter, that's our tax rate. Again, this here is the cent discount. This is what's gonna be going down again next year and down one more year and eventually to zero. So that's why if you're to zero this out, our tax rate would actually be up, I think, 5 or 6%, not just by the 3%. Then you divide it by your CLA, again, a little bit of. Changes the state to make things even more confusing. They've divided by a statewide adjustment because. People were thinking that the 65% CLA, or basically, I think the whole state was underassessed. So they're trying to make people a little bit
I really think what they did there was they were trying to dampen the impact that local CLAs would have in fluctuating the tax rate. So by bringing in this statewide adjustment, it just makes those swings locally less volatile.
So you divide your equalized homestead by your statewide, by your CLA, because again, all the state is based on your property values, and they try to, you want to equalize Norwich's property, we were just reassessed with someone that may not have been assessed, right? So that's how you get the overall tax rate that contributes to the state ed fund. So our nominal tax rate is gonna go down by about %. So again, these are the things that I've worked with Teresa to add in. These are the costs here, so the added cost of that building site would be 74. We'd basically add about 1%. Tech integration, that obviously would add about 0.5%. 0.8 would obviously be about twice that amount. The math coach is that amount. This is the sum of the other expenses, but you can see we can do whatever we want. And then we've done a sample here of just $100,000 increase in aggregate. Would go from, you know, a 6% increase to a 7.3% increase. It's still just, you know, pretty much a flat tax rate. And these are the resulting increases actually, so actually, that's already in the math here, so you're talking. The difference, again, between the 7.4 and the 615 is basically 0.9%, or obviously 74,000. This is the increase in the tax rate, would be a 0.5% change in the tax rate, so these are the differences down below. So, Gina,
I liked Michael's idea. Or the second idea. But I'd like to propose that we approve the 0.8 tech integrator. Plus another 10, that like that $100,000 column, and the $10,000 extra either goes to facilities. Or it's used to increase what we pay substitutes, so we have more support from the substitute angle, but without having to hire a second building person. Like, I mean, what I'm hearing is we have a demand and for subs. That is not being met, and we probably need to pay more to get more people in the building, and so maybe you get creative and use the money that way. But I'm very. Invested in making sure we have tech and support in the school, and comes from my personal experience of supervising an IT team at a technology company. And the problems and issues around the apps that you described were hard to manage in a technology company. And so here, I think that the risk of not having that for our kids is greater, and not something we want to be dealing with as a board or as a school, or putting our teachers in. And so that's my vote. Like, I mean, I feel like we've discussed this a lot, so I don't personally have to discuss a lot more. So I'll put that out there.
good. And again, I think we did, you know, the reason we're having this, it seems like kind of small numbers, and the overall implication of the tax rate's fairly small. I think what we're really concerned about though is keeping this increase and keeping this baseline number. I mean, again, when you look at just the overall level of spending, right? I mean, it's some, you know, every year, a 6% increase, although it might not be a lot. I mean, that's another $1 million, right? That we're adding on here, and that's gonna be, that's really why we're doing this in Dresden as well, and that's why. As hard as it was, as easy as it would have been just to be like, you know what, let's just spend over there. There was some really hard discussions, and the board actually took some fairly, you know, made some hard decisions.
I guess the way I just, I'll stop after this is $90,000 or another additional 50 for the tech, or 40, whatever, 43,000. If we had an issue, that's gonna cover the legal costs. I mean, and then some. I think that we'd be penny wise and pound foolish to not, like, in a kind of environment where AI and technology is continuing to grow and grow and grow. I would be disappointed if we didn't invest in that for our kids. I'll stop it.
Okay. Anybody else have any?
Let me answer the question now on the facilities. It was basically, there were circuits that they wanted installed and stuff like that, so we kind of put that in there that maybe we can get it done, because there were certain things, but then when we discussed, you know, when we were trying to reduce the budget, and there was other things that had to do with like carpeting and flooring and stuff, so we were gonna take advantage if we could. But they weren't something that were going to be critical in the sense of if we had to reduce it, they were not gonna be detrimental to the education and the safety of the things like that.
I just want to say thank you for the explanation. I don't think we're the only school district who should be thinking about deferred maintenance. I mean, Vermont's as a matter of public policy at the state level, doesn't do building aid. So it kind of makes, at least for the time being, all of us responsible for this. And the tab comes due. It's just when you want to pay for it. I'm sensitive about keeping the tax rate low. I'm sensitive about keeping the budget in check. Something I agree with that Roger's brought up the last 2 weeks in public comment is there's gotta be a time to advocate and fight like heck for your schools. So I want to do that and be able to say to people in Montpelier, we are responsible when it comes to the budget. I just think that we gotta be really careful with maintenance, because if you end up having to do it at a time not of your choosing,
Right.
you really end up in a gym. And I won't repeat everything Gina said about tech integrationists, but I wholeheartedly agree.
And I think thank you, Michael. Yeah, I think the only thing, and again, from my perspective, I was kind of looking at this, I'm like, well, I mean, just add all back, like the tax rate's not really going up, but I think that's just a bad idea, because again, when you start having this number up top increase too much, don't forget, this yield number came from the state based on some assumptions about what we're all spending. So even though our tax rate is kind of flat, if we're like, you know, we could technically probably have a 5% tax rate increase and increase our budget by 15%. I think if we did that and everyone in the state did that, this number will probably come back to us and change. Because everyone's spending more than they should be. I'm looking at you a little bit here, but that's the risk about just going
That's what
hog wild
happened
here, and just because this number here is not really bothering us too much. Cause again, this can change between now and when the tax bills come out. This is just an estimate. Based on what the DOE thinks all the towns are gonna spend on their budgets. Okay.
Yeah, just,
Yeah,
just to, I mean, so that we can kind of move along to a vote, I'm for the tech integrationist, and I definitely think we should take advantage of the facilities and the one-time spending. As long as I've been on the board, we keep talking about the fact that we don't spend enough to fix things, and it was a huge part of the strategic plan that we kind of keep ignoring and kicking down the road, so I'm fine with that.
all right, do we have any other board comments for Michael?
I mean, well, just very briefly, I mean. I think Garrett is right, the chair is right to bring up risks, and I guess the two risk questions I have are. The ADM number scares me, because like others mentioned last week, my degree faith in the agency of education is. Not as high as one would wish. And a surprise on the ADM, they came back and said, oops, we were wrong about this by 30 weighted students would be. A huge problem, so I'm just looking from the administration, hey, how solid do you think that number is? And then, we've had a lot of changes in the business office, so I just want to know like your level of confidence. In the numbers as they're put up there, which that's not meant as a criticism, it's just like, hey, things, a budget is a plan. The only thing we know about it is that it won't be exactly right when you see actuals next year. And so I guess on those two issues, I'm just trying to assess the risk to the budget as constructed.
So I know as far as like the straight up ADM for the pre-K to 12 numbers. I betted those hours over hours going back. I mean, literally pulling up every student record in our school for the kids that live in Norwich. To make sure that they line up. Now, our numbers that were presented and sent to the state October 1st, but that's the number obviously there that should have been imported. So now when I go into Power School and I compare it even to meal time for what we have for students, you know, it was off like 1 or 2 or so. Well, we know that some students come and go since October 1st. So other than that, pretty much my numbers were right on with theirs finally. Before, I mean, we started out with no numbers. And then finally, version 10 finally had numbers. The number that still concerned me over and over, and again, let me back up, the ELA numbers, those seem to match up. And that was a number like that came in at 10. The number that was striking is going from about 35 kids to about 54 for the federal poverty level. So that's the one that kind of concerned me, and that's the one that I've gone back over and over and over. And based on the number of students that are flagged as free and reduced in Norwich, I'll say Marion Cross, is about 24 students. And then at the high school, middle school level, we've got another 20 something students, things like 23. So when I started putting those two numbers together, I'm like, okay, I can buy into the 54. And again, we're talking about numbers that were, those particular numbers, believe it or not, they are provided by the state. We don't provide them that number. That is from the direct cert list and everything. So, and them doing the calculation too on the poverty level. Whether it's, I may not I still have a level of uneasy with that number, but at the same time, if you look back 2 years ago, I think the number was 828. Last year it dropped to 816, and now we're back to 834. So I still question, and I know that Jamie over and over and still questioned and probably still will, that whether or not last year's number was correct.
And that was the year that we were below 2% poverty level. So, and I've gone through, I certified both of these numbers, the ADM, the LTW. And I've looked through everything with our data specialists. We've gone through all the numbers. I looked at all the work that Teresa did, and I liked the charts that they sent us. So it's, I mean, it seems like everything is as accurate as it could be. But the state has been notoriously not great about this stuff. And I think, last year Jay wrote a letter basically protesting the numbers that we had, so. But we've definitely had an increase in bring reduced lunch numbers from the year before, so we're receiving our Title I again. But, yeah, and Teresa's gone back and forth with the person at the state.
And then I also, again, with vetting even just the student number. I too was working with our IT department and stuff like that, because those numbers are presented and given to the state. But like I said, when I was like within 1 or 2, and I know that since October, we've had movement with students. I was like, and I had some where they're right on, student count didn't change from what I have and what the state has. But, yeah, it's.
We talked with John too, just about the numbers of the school.
Right.
Too.
The national unemployment rate has gone up in the last 12 to 18 months. It is within reason to think that it's impacting Norwich families as much as it's impacting other places.
But
That's just my guess, but.
Okay. Neil,
Yeah, I will say, so, I mean, for starters, that, whether the 834.92 number is right or wrong, it is the number, that's the final number from the AO.
Yeah.
So that's the number that we will be using this year for calculating the tax rate.
Right.
Yeah, I guess when I look at this, like, there's two ways to look at this. One is, the tax rate impact. And, under normal circumstances, we sometimes refer to this as tax capacity, right? Do we think that we've got the capacity to add additional expenditures in because the resulting tax rate seems like it's palatable? The other way to look at this is the future look of things as to what's coming down the road. And Garrett, you had mentioned a little bit about this before, right? So under the existing formula, we're seeing a declining cents discount on our tax rate in future years. So we know that that's heading in the other direction, and, the future us could be sitting here next year having another discussion about what reductions we think we need to make because that cent discount is going down. The other, and on top of that, when we see even small fluctuations in the percentage of Norwich versus Hanover kids that go to Dresden, that affects our net assessment from Dresden. And I believe that the graduating 6th grade classroom here is a fairly large class, and that's likely to just ever so slightly monkey with that percentage number and shift more of that burden over to Norwich for next year's budget. I really like Michael's idea of considering some one-time money in capital expenditures, building maintenance costs. I'm less inclined to support adding to the budget that would be recurring costs, only because that establishes a new baseline for next year that we all have to work from. And I will let you all know, so here's my doom and gloom roll, right? That's the one that I play sometimes here. So I was just recently, Rebecca had just reached out to me a day ago. So there's a lot of uncertainty around redistricting in the state of Vermont right now. But one thing is for certain is that the governor and even some Democratic leadership are pushing hard to keep going with Act 73. The way that Act 73 was designed is that if you didn't take care of the redistricting part, then all of the other pieces after that that came wouldn't get implemented. But the other pieces that came after that was a change in the funding formula. And so there's this big push this session, I think, to get that redistricting piece done so that they can move on to the funding formula change. The funding formula change switches us from deciding locally on how much we want to spend here and the state basically giving us a pot of money and saying, you figure it out. There are actually numbers in Act 73 that you can use to do some forecasting, and that number is the per pupil spending number. And so the number that we see here, right, this 19,011, well, so that's the second building, so yeah, 19,024. The number that is in Act 73 is $15,033.
Hmm.
If you calculate that out, which I did recently, against the FY 26 budget, so the one we're working on right now, that would be a reduction of just about $4.6 million for us. Let me let that sink in for a second. $4.6 million. Now, if there's a good news story, we don't get hit with all of that at once. They, like the cents discount, they spread it out over a period of 5 years. But in year one, we would look at reductions of just over $900,000. So just shy of $1 million. Right, and so I'm very cautious because, I think something's gonna happen in ed reform this year. The governor has already said that he's gonna hold the general budget, and any approval of that yield number hostage unless lawmakers come forward with some change in education reform. So things are gonna get, I think, a little heated, a little nasty even, probably before we get to the end of the session. All this to say that I am in support of the 18,000 addition for facilities improvements, but I would not support any of the remaining increases. Gina?
I hear the doom and gloom. And instead of piloting 0.8 tech integrator for a year, what if we pilot 0.8 tech integrator, make it a 1-year position? And then the other thing I'd say is if we're in the position that you just described, we're gonna have a bigger problem than a $90,000 thing if we have to cut $1 million from the budget. That's like all things come back on the table. And I'm really struggling to see us cut back technology resources at the school, given what we've heard from teachers, parents, and my own experience. And I think we're putting ourselves at risk and we have a different discussion to have. But I appreciate what you're saying. You've been saying it but we've been hearing this and then things haven't happened. So maybe something will change too. We don't know. I guess I feel like if our responsibility is we're talking about next year, would you be open to a pilot, like 1 year term, or I don't know what you call it in education, that's what we call it, like a 1 year, position where you try it, see how it works. Then it's not guaranteed. It's like the grant position that you talked about, the math coach, where it was 0.6 and it was only a year. I'm a little worried. Our assistant principal or whatever your assistant superintendent is also we are spread so thin. Like I don't know. But that's my percent.
Yeah, I guess, and I won't add much other than, I appreciate, Neil's perspective. I think you can look at it in terms of what tax capacity is there. You can look at it in terms of, hey, having a responsible budget. You can look at it in terms of, hey, is Montpelier going to dismember our school district? Because the kind of cuts that $4 million would entail would dismember our school district, and presumably we would have a response to that. I actually am proposing these two items because while I don't know what the future of education is, and I'm not a professional educator, in all versions of the future that I can think of, we need to deal with deferred maintenance, and technology will be a bigger deal, not a smaller deal. And so I just think strategically, you put it in this year, and if the state requires you to blast $1 million out of your school budget at some point, you deal with that at that point in time. There are a lot of unknowns. when I went and worked on education finance in tax policy in Montpelier 15 years ago. One legislator commented to me that 5% school budget increases have been unsustainable for all 30 years people have been voting for them. I know the governor is very serious about this, but. I think our job is to craft the best budget we can for next year, and I don't think taking 18 or 50 or $100,000 as an effective hedge against $1 to $4 million in risk in the future. That's it. I mean, I think we're bored. I'm reminded by a better board member than me that individually we have no power, we vote, and then, we go from there. And so I guess am persuaded to try to keep those two items in and move along.
And Michael, the only thing I would say is, so for sure add those two items back, right?
Yes, I'm persuaded to stay where I started the conversation, which is 0.8 tech integration as and a modest increase in one-time facilities investments.
And what that results in, basically I just did it, but obviously it would be taking this 90 plus another 18, this number here actually becomes 108.62. This number here would basically be 7.46%, so another 0.1%, and this number here is basically it goes up by basically instead of 145.7, it's 146.6, so it's basically minus 0.21%, so it's pretty. So yeah, so you're basically going from 6% to 7.4. 6, it's 7.46 is what that is. So the overall would basically be 6.99, that number there.
I guess a point of clarification I have for the chair is, do we make a decision on these two items by voting on them or just reaching consensus? How do we normally, there's a budget as presented and then these two items are
I
outside.
think we'd be approving a budget tonight for this 7.8, so basically the budget would be 8,891,377, which would be this number here, plus that, plus 18,000.
Yeah, I'm asking so I understand it procedurally, and then, to Neil's comments, he was in support of one piece of that, but not another, and so to the extent we're gonna vote, I would propose them separately, and so as to not tie the two of them together, because they don't necessarily need to be tied together as items.
I guess we could vote for them separately.
Yes, but I would do it in reverse order, so I would take a vote on, adding the tech integrator, and would take a vote on adding the building facility amount, and then based on what of those two things
Yeah,
pass,
and the budget.
add that amount to
Yeah.
the total expenditure, and then take that vote.
Yeah,
So there are 3 votes.
Potentially, yeah.
Let's do it.
but
Oh, we have to wait.
yes,
All right, any other comments from the board or questions from the board?
Just a point of clarification, because I thought I heard Gina suggest a $10,000 raise instead of an 18.
I'm okay to let that go.
Just
Just
wanted
trying to
to
be creative.
Okay, thank you.
And just where that came from, no, was over in Dresden, there was a talk about just putting a dollar amount versus there was very detailed spreadsheets with little tiny cuts, and the board decided there is a point at which just.
Yeah.
Make it 25 instead of 2 plus 2 plus 4. Okay. All right, hearing nothing from board, any members from the public comments?
Roger Arnold, just comment. So to reference gloom and doom, I do think gloom and doom can very quickly become righteous anger, which is a very useful emotion, and advocacy can go from activism. And I do think there's like a lot of political education that needs to happen in our community, and specifically political education, not, just education. So the role of the board or PTO or any other organization to do that, I would hope would materialize. For the second building sub, I'm trying, just comment generally, as I know it's off the table. I'm trying to understand from the perspective of labor, how you could, be an educator, a qualified educator, be perhaps one of the best in the environs to be hired by such a distinguished elementary school, and then, you know, 3 students, 4 students can move, or you don't get the enrollments that you have tracked and they could lose their livelihood. From 1 year to the next. So I guess my rhetorical comment would be, I have a hard time reconciling how someone's livelihood can be made so volatile in this climate. I'm shocked there's not the union that would have something to say about that. Certainly would. But so just my comment would be, it's a shame that, you know, we're not able to retain a position from 1 year to the next in this instance. Just from the perspective of labor and someone's job, not so much a good budget decision, which is clear that it is. So thanks.
All right, thank you for that.
Just I'm sorry, just a point of clarification, the second building sub is not a current position, it's an
No,
addition.
but it's-
So there's no
It was
volatility there.
proposed as a solution for
Okay.
that 1 point
Okay.
FT that you would be losing effectively, from what I understand.
Unfortunately, that also would probably not be the same person.
Right.
Either necessarily, right, so we'll be retiring for a builder.
Like the whole system
Correct.
is sort of affected consequentially.
The question really, tech integration, I think this question might be more for Sean and Lauren, if you guys don't mind, but your vote. My question, if it goes, if it does not pass of adding in the 0.8 tech integration and we're at 0. I know you have a administrative overall and in-house, does the ticketing system and the SAU have the capacity and the ability to absorb not having anyone in-house? That's my concern.
2 different things.
Okay.
So the other position, the current 1.0, the person that's fixing the
Yeah.
machines and doing the tech, that is the person that is directly responsible for the ticketing.
Okay,
So, this does not impact ticketing.
good. All right. Okay.
So I do put in a ticket if can't use my view board, for example. There are some tickets that are related to staff interaction with technology. And the ticket right now. Yeah, and depending who that goes to, I mean, yeah, it can go to the person who's the 1.0 now. Or it can go to the person who is the 0.4 now.
The tickets can be directed
Right.
the way that they need to be directed.
Yeah.
I would assert that perhaps that is not the correct workflow that should be happening in something like this.
So if we eliminated all the tech tickets, would go to the 1.0, because that would be the only person available.
We flow back to.
No.
Any other comments? Hearing none, okay. I guess at this point then, we'll move on to voting.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I would make a motion to add $18,000 to this budget for one-time maintenance and facilities expenses.
I have a
Do
second.
we have to do the warning articles first?
I think that's after we have.
That's after.
That's not part of the budget.
It's after.
It's the end result.
Yeah.
Okay,
I think with this one we do.
okay.
Do you need me to add items to this agenda live now to make this happen, or can they be added later?
Yeah, we don't need to add them.
All right, do I have a second to that? Right, you said all those in favor?
Aye.
All right. All right, so the 18,000 will be added back in. Do I have a motion regarding the 0.8 tech integrator?
I would make a motion to add a 0.8 tech integrator to the FY 26-27 budget.
All right, do I have a second? Gina?
Point of clarification, dollar amount associated with that?
Oh, yes. Let me look at, with gratitude to the budget committee for their well-dressed spreadsheet containing all that. I make a motion to add $90,682 to the budget in service of appointing FTE tech integration test.
All right, to a second.
I'll second it. Yeah, that's fine. Be consistent, but a note taker.
All right, all those in favor? All right. Those opposed? Yeah, all right, so that will also pass.
Right.
As far as the overall budget,
That's a total addition of 108,682.
exactly, right? I mean, the actual number.
Yeah.
Seven.
889137.
That's what we do. Eight nine one three seven seven.
889377.
Right. 7.46%.
1.46%, exactly. And you have a tax rate of 14066, Teresa?
Correct.
Yeah, I'll leave the roundings a little off, but it could be mine.
Okay, I think it should be 1.4066.
Yeah, it's the same, I think I'm getting.
Okay. Okay. So do I have a motion for a budget of 8891,377 for the Marion Cross 2026-27 budget?
So moved.
So,
I'll second it.
second, all those in favor? All right. All right, those are really tough decisions. The numbers weren't particularly big. I appreciate everyone's work on this. I appreciate everyone's opinion on this. I know it was a tough one to decide on. I appreciate all of Sean's work, the administration's work, and remind the public that a lot of these hard decisions are at the request of the board. So we are asking the administration to go through and come up with stuff. So this is by no means any of these things that are changes or things that they would necessarily like or want to do. Okay, we'll move on. Should we so I need to change my screen here. There. All right. So on to that, we'll do the warning articles, the warrant article, sorry.
Not upload or refresh, since we just changed that number.
Yeah, and then before you do that, can I ask one question? So Teresa, did the number in the warrant article package should be the Norwich budget minus the board salaries?
Sure.
And so what I don't know is if that amount that was approved, did that include board salaries? That's ex board salary.
That one did include, like, yeah, the same as how we did it sort of with the other districts where that particular number did include it, even though it's on the warrant articles.
Yeah, so I think, guys, for purposes of the warrant articles that we approved tonight, we need to do that 8891,377 minus $2,500 to get to the amount that's gonna show up in the warrant article for the expenditure budget.
Okay.
On that. So, 888,877.
I like that. 8, 7. That plays a lot. Yeah.
Your school budget brought to you by the Rio Casino.
Exactly, yeah. I can hear what's his face's voice from the Vermont motto right now in my head, like.
Thank you.
Thank you.
They were fair. I will move to approve the 26-27 warrant articles. with an adjustment to Article 5 for the school board budget to expend of $8,888,877.
I second that.
I don't know whether this matters, but on the draft, it says 2024-2025 articles. At the top,
Oh,
so just,
I changed that. I don't know, sometimes it seems like,
well, as someone whose name was left off of the ballot once, I kind of looked at these looking carefully. Cost the town a couple
it did change that.
$1,000.
It looks like there are a couple different references to the year.
Two,
Yeah.
across the board, 2026, 2027, right?
Yes,
Mhm.
right,
Okay,
so that just needs to be cleaned up.
Yeah.
all right. So we had a motion and a second. All those in favor of approving the warrant articles as amended?
Aye.
Aye.
That is also unanimous. Okay. I don't think there's a need to move into executive session tonight. All right, so our agenda topics for the next meetings, presumably we don't need to get reconvened right now. I think if anything changes on the Dresden side anyways, we don't need to. That day, we just approved an Norwich one. So yes, for our next meeting, please get any agenda topics that you may have at this point. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Can I ask a question before we adjourn?
Sure.
Just because it appears we adjourned incorrectly for the last two budget meetings.
That was only because we had a warrant article.
Okay, I just wanna make sure we don't
We were
do it
waiting
waiting time.
It was just because we had a service agreement warrant article, but it hasn't been read.
Okay, and so just, again,
So,
yeah, thank you, but, okay.
We don't have to proceed.
I didn't mean to interrupt the flow, but.
I would move to adjourn the meeting at 8 or 9 PM. With gratitude to Neil and Garrett for all their work for the budget committee
Yeah.
for the 2026, 2027.
And Teresa in her first year.
Yes. We're just keeping it, board members. Mention one is excluded, all others.
Seconded by Gene, all those in favor?
Aye.
We are now adjourned at 8:10 PM.
I was my earliest, 9 to 8.